Hi, hello, good morning everyone. I'm Dr. Harika Kishore. On behalf of Vista's Learning, I'm here as your biology educator. Vista's Learning, it's an online education platform which works with an ideology of providing quality education for all. Visit our website www.v-learning.in where you're going to get an access for all the live classes, recorded sessions, academic videos and also study materials. Moreover, you're going to get the lecture notes in the form of PDFs. And also get your acquaintance with all the channels available and make sure to subscribe to the channel Vista's Learning Class 11 and 12. If you find this session useful and interesting, make sure that you click on the like as well as share this session with your friends. And also, don't forget to click on the bell icon so that you are going to get all the upcoming video notifications. Now, let's start our present session. So, we have been discussing about the chapter Organisms and Populations, which comes under the unit Ecology. And in continuation of the previous session where we have been discussing about the population interactions. We know that population interactions are very important because each and every organism has to maintain its association with both biotic as well as abiotic factors of an ecosystem. Right? So, in this series, we have been understanding how the two species which are involved in the interaction, what we call it as a interacting species. This interacting species may get benefited or may get harmed. Depending upon that, we have been categorized into different interactions. So, in that, today, let's discuss about one of the important interaction and that is predation. In predation, we find the existence of two interacting species. What are they? One is predator and other one is prey. If you think of predation, then we came to remember like we can connect with tiger and deer, where tiger is a predator and deer is a prey. And the same way, there are so many important roles that are performed by the predator in this relationship. Let's understand. So, because if you think that there are no predators, then the population of the prey is going to increase a lot. That means predators are very important to keep the control of the population of prey. That is one thing. Along with that, predators are also used as a channels, conduits. What we call it as the conduits or all otherwise called as channels. Channels for what? Channels for transferring energy. Channels for transferring energy. Energy transfer from one tropic level to another tropic level. So now let's start to understand the importance of the predators in the predation, in the relation predation. Now, this point is very important. So, we know that there are so many types of interactions like mutualism, commensalism, competition, predation, parasitism. Out of these and even amensalism, out of these interactions in your NCERT textbook, one sentence was given very important where predation 1, parasitism 2, right, and commensalism 3. These 3 interactions, it is given like these 3 interactions are sharing a one common characteristic feature, and that is the interacting species live closely together. Yes, the remaining interactions also we do find the interacting species lives close together, but in your NCERT textbook these 3 interactions were given. So it's very important to remember because each and every sentence of the NCERT textbook are going to convert into MCQs. So it is very important to understand. Here the 3 interactions, predation, parasitism and commensalism. These are the 3 interactions which share a common characteristic feature, that is where the interacting species live in a close association. That means live closely together. Right? Now, let's understand about the predators' important roles. So here we know that predators are being used as a channels. conduits for the transfer of energy from one trophic level to another trophic level. That means from producers to herbivores, from herbivores to carnivores, like that. That means simply we can say the transfer of the energy takes place from the producers to the consumers, right? So here, besides acting as a channel conduits for energy transfer across trophic levels, different trophic levels, like predators plays other important roles also. Besides being a conduits, pipelines or the channels for the transfer of energy, here they keep the prey population under control. This is very, very important to understand. For example, we know that a common example for the predator and prey is tiger and deer. For example, you think that the number of the tigers in that particular area is very, very less when compared to the number of the deers. As there is, the predator number is very low, there is an increase of the population size in the deer, which leads to the instability. And therefore, it is very, very important that the presence of the predator keeps the population of the prey under control. This is also one of the important role. And other. So, the prey species can achieve very high population density and causes ecosystem instability. So, the maintenance of the ecosystem stability is by the predators, as the predators keep the population size, population density of the prey under control, it is going to lead to the ecosystem stability. So, if the predators are absent, it is going to lead to the ecosystem instability. That means the predators are acting as a channels, conduits for the transfer of the energy from one trophic level to another trophic level. They are acting as a conduits. One is conduits. Producers are the conduits of the energy transfer from one trophic level to the another trophic level. And the next important role is it maintains ecosystem stability. It maintains ecosystem stability. Now, so another important role. Look at here. When certain exotic species, which is not native of the present species, when a new species has been introduced into this present habitat, let's understand, or introduced into a geographical area. Select one geographical area where a species has been introduced. As it is introduced newly, we are calling it as an exotic species. They become invasive because it is newly have been added to that geographical area. Therefore, naturally, there is no presence of the predator for that particular species. Therefore, it leads to the invasive, that means tremendous, extremely increase in their population density. Look at here. Becomes invasive and starts spreading fast because the invaded land does not have its natural predators. Natural predators. So, in that particular area, there is no natural predator. So, as the predator is not present, it leads to increase the number of newly introduced exotic species. So, here for that an example is prickly pear cactus. Prickly pear cactus, it is a plant which has been introduced newly during early 1920s into Australia. As it is newly added, this plant as it is newly added to this geographical area, it causes havoc. Havoc means damage by spreading rapidly into millions of the hectares of rangelands. That means natural grasslands. Grasslands. Because this cactus which has been introduced newly, it doesn't have its natural predator in the Australian lands, that is rangelands. Therefore, it leads to a massive, tremendous spreading very fast, and it occupies a millions of hectares of rangelands. Now what happened? Look at here. Finally, the invasive cactus was brought under control only after introduction of its predator, that is moth. As a natural predator is not there, there is a very wide fast spreading of this cactus. Then after the introduction of its predator, what is that? Cactus feeding predator, that is a moth, from its natural habitat was introduced into the Australia, then it comes under control, and this is called as biological control. And so predators are useful in biological controlling. So here biological control methods adapted in agriculture pest control are the basis on the ability of the predator to regulate prey population. So the important roles of the predator: one, it is acting as a conduits, which is useful for the transfer of the energy from one trophic level to another trophic level, and it under control. That means prey population is maintained under control, right? Prey population, and therefore it is useful to maintain ecosystem stability. Right? Now, moving on to, so here predators also helps in maintaining species diversity. Along with the previously discussed important roles that has been conducted by the predators in a predation, predators also useful to maintain species diversity. How it is happening in a community? By reducing the intensity of competition among competing prey species. So here, if they are two preys which are competing for the common resources, then if the predator is going to predate this preys, there is a reduction in the number of the competing preys. So therefore, it is maintaining species diversity. And here we can understand this by example which is given in your NCERT. In a rocky intertidal community of an American Pacific coast, the starfish Pisaster, very, very important. Pisaster is an important predator. So here in this table is already discussed where mutualism, both are benefited. Both are getting harmed in competition. And we are in the discussion of this predation, where predator is getting benefited, prey is getting harmed. And parasitism, where parasite is getting benefited, host is getting harmed. And commensalism, where one species is getting benefited and the other species being neutral. Amensalism, where one species is getting harmed and the other species is being neutral. So now we are at depredation. Now here we know that in a intertidal community, the superior predator is starfish, disaster. Now, here in a field experiment, what they have done, they have removed the starfish. We know that this starfish disaster is a great superior predator. When all the starfish were removed from an enclosed intertidal area, all the starfish has been removed from an intertidal community. More than 10, this is very important, more than 10 species of the invertebrates become extinct. within an year because of the interspecific competition. Because of interspecific competition. If the predator is present, it keeps the population of the invertebrates under control. As the predator, that means the starfish is removed experimentally, therefore there is no predator available to keep the prey population in control. So the prey population which are competing among themselves leads to reduction in their number. So it leads to extinction. About 10 species of the invertebrates become extinct due to interspecific competition among themselves. This is very, very important. So this is an example to explain that predators are useful to maintain species diversity. We are in the discussion of understanding the important roles which are performed by the predators. Predators are useful to maintain ecosystem stability. Predators are useful to maintain the species diversity, and predators are useful to keep the population of the prey under control, and also predators act as a conduits for the transfer of the energy from the one trophic level to the another trophic level. Right? Now, so here, if a predator is too efficient, very, very potential, and overexploits its prey, then the prey might become extinct. And following it, the predator also will become extinct. The predator will also become extinct for the lack of food because it don't find food. First, let's understand. The predator feeds on the prey. It is overexploiting the population of the prey such that the population of the prey is decreased very, very, very much. Therefore, the prey is not available for the predator, and it leads to the extinction of the predator itself, right? So, for this reason, predators in nature are very, very clever, prudent. They are very, very prudent that they will not completely extinct the population of the prey. They keep the population of the prey under control. That's it. So, now, prey species has evolved various defense in order to protect themselves from predator, in order to lessen the impact of the predators. We know that the predators predates prey, that means they hunt, they eat, they take the prey as their food. For that, prey also have evolved some of the mechanisms, and incorporated some of the special mechanisms such that it can escape from the predator or it can lessen the impact of the predator. And for that example, some of the species of insects and frogs are cryptically colored. Cryptic coloration. That means camouflaged. Camouflaged is the mechanism where the color of the prey bends. That means it blends with the color of the background. For example, if you look at this, here we can see the green background. To blend its color, the surface of the frog is also changing into green, such that it is very difficult to identify that there is a prey in this background. So here, and this cryptic coloration is one of the special mechanisms which has been evolved by the prey to avoid being detected easily by the predator. This is one of the advanced mechanism that has been evolved by prey. Some of them are poisonous, and therefore it is avoided by the predators. For example, the monarch butterfly tastes very, very bitter, unpleasant taste, is highly distasteful to its predator, commonly birds, because of a special chemical present in its body. And interestingly, the butterfly acquires this chemical during its development, where the caterpillar stage of butterfly feeds on a poisonous weed. Therefore, the caterpillar feeds on the poisonous weed, and as it is developed into butterfly, this butterfly tastes very, very distasteful, unpleasant to the predators. Therefore, predators avoid eating this type of butterfly. It is another type of the mechanism to lessen the impact of the predators. Now, moving on to, this is all about insects, right? Coming to plants. For plants, we know that herbivores, which feeds on the plants, are the predators. For plants, the predators are herbivores. Here, nearly 25% of all the insects are known to be as phytophagots. Phyto means plants. Phagous means eat. They will eat on, that means feeding on plant sap as well as the other parts of the plant. 25% of the insects feeds on the plant sap as well as the other parts of the plant. The problem is particularly very severe in the claims of plants when compared to the animals, because when the predator is coming close to the animal prey will move because it have locomotion. It can run, it can move faster such that it can escape from the predator. But that chance is completely absent in the case of plants. The problem is particularly severe by plants because unlike animals, they cannot run away. They cannot run away from the predators. So how the plants are protecting themselves against their predators? How the plants have evolved in such a way that they can protect themselves from the predators. So here, plants therefore have evolved an astonishing, very surprising varieties of morphological as well as chemical defenses against their predators. What are the predators? Herbivores are the predators of the plant system. Now, so here for that example, one of the morphological adaptations that has been taken by the plants to protect themselves against the predators is formation of thorns. Thorns can be seen in the case of acacia, examples which were given, and cactus are the most important common morphological means of defense. Now, many plants produce and stores chemicals that makes the herbivores, as it is storing the chemicals, this chemical will enter into herbivores if it feeds on that particular plant variety. And that herbivores sick when eaten, inhibiting feeding, digestion, disrupts its reproduction, and finally even it kills it. So these are all the morphological and special mechanisms that has been evolved by the plant system to protect themselves against the predation. Now, we might have seen, it is very common to observe that no calotropis has been eaten by the herbivores. This is because the plant produces highly poisonous cardiac glycoside. This is very important. Calotropis, it's a weed. It's known to produce a very harmful chemical, and that is very highly poisonous, and that chemical is cardiac glycoside. Remember this, cardiac glycoside. And it is why we never see any cattle or the goats that are browsing these plants. This is also one of the chemical that is special mechanism that has been evolved by the species of calotropis. Now, a wide varieties of chemical substances that we extract from the plants on the commercial basis. What are the chemical substances like nicotine, caffeine, quinine, strychnine, opium, etc. These are all the chemical substances that are produced by the plant system, and these chemical substances are actually produced by them as a defense against grazers and browsers. Grazers means herbivores which feeds on the grasslands, and browsers which feeds on the small plants, herbs, shrubs, tender leaves as well as other parts of the plant system. Now, when Darwin spoke about the struggle for existence and survival of the fittest in nature, he was convinced that interspecific competition is a potent force in organic evolution. See, interspecific competition. Here, it is generally believed that competition occurs between closely related species, and competition occurs when the resources are very, very limited. It is generally believed that when is the competition happens? If the two species are very close to each other and fighting for the same resources available. But that is not completely, entirely true. What are the points that were blindly believed? One is, always the competition exists between two closely related species. It is not entirely true, because there is an evidence of existence of this competition between two unrelated species. And the second point is, always competition happens if the resources in the form of food or the space anyway. So, if the resources are very, very limited, as the availability of the resources is limited, then the competition occurs. That is another belief. But it is also not entirely true. For that, to explain, it is generally believed that competition occurs when closely related species compete for the same resources. It is not entirely true. And other is that are limiting. So, here, first, they are telling like competition occurs between closely related species which are competing for the same resources, but it is not entirely true. And the second point, the resources availability is very limited. This is also not true. But these are not entirely true. Why these are not entirely true? Are there any chances of existing the competition between two unrelated species? Are there any chances of existing of this competition for the resources which is already limited, which is unlimited, which is available unlimitedly? Let me explain. So, firstly, totally unrelated species could also compete for the same resources. It's always believed that the competition exists between two closely related species, but it is not true. Even the unrelated species also compete for the available resources. For that, the example is, for instance, in some shallow South American lakes, they are not the native of that particular place, visiting flamingos and resident, that means which are residing there, resident fishes. These two are very unrelated. They are not closely related species, right? One is visiting flamingos and other one is residing fishes. Compete for the common food. Common food is what? That is zooplanktons in the lake. So this is an example to explain that there is an existence of the competition between the unrelated species, totally unrelated species. What is the second point? We believe that competition always happens if the resources is limited. That is also not entirely true. Secondly, resources need not to be limited. If the availability is unlimited also, there is an evidence of the existence of this competition. For competition to occur, in interference competition, which interferes with another species. So here, the feeding efficiency of one species might be reduced due to interfering or inhibitory presence of other species. What happening here is, one species will inhibit or interfere with the eating habitat of the other species. That means it is interfering the life of the other species. Even if the resources are abundant. Here the reason is not the limiting resources. Here that is because of interference competition that exists between two species. Here one species might be reduced, efficiency of that means the presence of the species might be, feeding efficiency of one species might be reduced due to interfering or inhibitory presence of the other species is itself inhibitory to the one species. That means the one which is in the association. Now, here, therefore, competition is best defined as a process in which fitness of one species is significantly lowered in the presence of another species. If the fitness of one species has been reduced significantly by the presence of another species, we can call that interaction as a competition. Here, no matter the availability of the resources, whether it is limited, whether it is unlimited. And also we can't say that the species, interacting species always has to be in a close association. That means we can say that totally unrelated species, even the resources are available, even the resources availability is there, still there is an existence of the competition. Therefore, we can define as a, if the fitness of the one species is significantly lowered by the presence of another species, then that type of interaction is called as competition. Fitness of the species is measured in terms of R. We know that R is the intrinsic rate of increase. Intrinsic rate of increase, right? Now, for that, another example where it is interfering competition. One of the feeding efficiency of one species has been interfered or inhibited by the presence of another species. And for that, the example is here. An Abingdon tortoise in Galapagos Islands become extinct within a decade, 10 years after goats were introduced. It is a predator, right? It is a competitor. Sorry for that. Here the goats are competitors for tortoise. So goats are introduced on the island, apparently, introduced on the island, apparently due to the greater browsing efficiency of goats. We know that goats will browse very efficiently when compared to the tortoise. Therefore, it competes. The availability of the grasslands are there, but still the competitor here, the goats have the high efficiency, feeding efficiency. Therefore, it is interfering, it is interrupting, it is inhibitory towards the tortoise. Therefore, it becomes extinct. Now, another evidence for the occurrence of competition in nature comes from what we call as a competition release. Competition release. Interference competition we have discussed. Now, let's understand competition release. Here, if a small geographical area, let's think that here this area is occupied by species A because it has been surrounded by species B. So here is the area which is occupied by species B, and here is the area which is occupied by species A. If you experimentally remove, see here we can find the presence of species A, and here it is occupied by species B. If we experimentally remove the species B, remove it, then in the coming years, we can see the wide spread of the species A. This area also occupied by species A. Before it has been occupied by B, therefore, it is the species A has been restricted only to this area. Right. Now, as the B is experimentally removed from this surrounding area, the spread is very, very fast. That is what we call it as a competition release. We are releasing the species A competition by removing the species B. Look at here. A species whose distribution is restricted. In the example what we have discussed here, the species A has been restricted to this area, to a very small geographical area because of the presence of competitively superior species. We thought like B, which is a competitively superior species, has been occupied previously. Then what happened is found to be expand its distribution range dramatically when the competing species is experimentally removed. That is what we explained, right? So previously it has been occupied. See, in this representation, consider this is a small geographical area which has been occupied by the species A, and the outside area has been occupied by competitively superior species, that is species B. In an experiment, we have removed the species B. Now what happens? In the absence of superiorly competitive species B, A got the chance to spread very fast. It starts to increase its distribution dramatically. That is what it is explained, and this is competition release. Now, here, Cannon's elegant field experiment shows that on the rocky sea coast of Scotland, the larger and competitively superior barnacle, that is Balanus. Here, Balanus is our species B in our experiment. It is superiorly competing species and that dominates the intertidal area. So, if you consider this is the intertidal area and this is where Balanus occupies, and it is superiorly competitive when compared to the another Balanus and excludes the smaller barnacle, that is Chatmalus. So here Chatmalus is inferiorly competitive, whereas Balanus is superiorly competitive, and therefore this Balanus restrict the distribution of Chatmalus. Now what happened? In generally, if we remove this Balanus, then there is a wide distribution of this Chatmalus. That is what we explained in the case of competition release. Now, in generally, we know that herbivores and plants appears to be more adversely affected by the competition when compared to the carnivores because of the number, because we have the number of the plants and herbivores are more. Therefore, the more herbivores will feed on the plants than more carnivores which feeds on the herbivores. So, therefore, adversely affected is always herbivores when compared to the carnivores. Now, Gauss competitive exclusion principle. Here, he states that two closely related species compete for the same resources cannot coexist. But this is not true. There is an evidence of existence of co-evolution. Indefinitely and competitively inferior one will be eliminated eventually. So, for example, A and B. These both are competing for the same resources which is available. Here, as B is inferior and A is superiorly competitive. So, there is a raise in the population density of the A and there is low, that is reduced in the population of the species B, and finally it leads to the elimination, that means eliminated eventually. This may be true if the resources are limited, but if the availability of the resources is plenty, then what happens? But not otherwise. Let's see if the resources are available plenty. For more studies, do not support such gross generalization opinions. What he is telling, the superior competitive species will grow, which leads to the eventually reduced and elimination of inferiorly competitive species. But there is an evidence of co-evolution. While they do not rule out the occurrence of interspecific competition in nature, they point out that the species facing competition might evolve mechanisms that promotes coexistence rather than exclusion. Rather than eliminating one species completely, there is an evidence of existing coexistence. Now, what is this coexistence? Coexistence is a mechanism. One such mechanism is resource partitioning. They are partitioning, they are dividing and taking their food independently without competing for the resources. If the two species competes for same resources, they could avoid this competition by choosing, for instance, different timings for feeding or different foraging, that is food searching patterns. For example, if there is an existence of competition for the same available resources between two species, this species, out of two species, A can feed during daytimes and B can feed during night times. So by this they can reduce the competition and they can coexist. For that, the example which was given, that is, MacArthur showed that 5 closely related species of warblers living on the same tree were able to avoid competition and promote coexistence due to behavioral changes in their foraging. Foraging is food searching. Food searching activity. By this, the species can eliminate the competition and they can coexist, right? Now, so by this we have finished the interactions, that is competition as well as predation. And in coming up class, let's discuss about the remaining population interactions. Till then, keep learning with V Learning. Thank you.